Why did he notice her when everyone else looked away? The bus stop was nearly empty, washed in the dull yellow glow of a single streetlight. Rain tapped against the shelter roof, dripping through cracks, falling onto puddles that mirrored a tired city. Daniel shifted on the bench, his arm draped protectively around his daughter's shoulders. Lily leaned against him, her small hand gripping his. She was only 8, but she carried silence like someone twice her age. That silence had grown since her mother passed. A quiet Daniel tried to fill with silly bedtime stories and laughter forced through clenched teeth. Tonight, though, even laughter seemed far away. The bus was late, the rain was heavy, and Daniel felt the weight of another long day, 2 jobs, rent barely covered, the guilt of always running on empty. He stared at the ground, but then Lily tugged his sleeve and whispered, "Daddy, she looks sad." Daniel lifted his eyes. That's when he saw her. A soldier, sitting alone on the bench opposite, her uniform soaked, her duffel bag slumped at her feet like it had given up too. She kept her head down, but her hands trembled. There was no phone in her grip, no umbrella, no company. Just stillness and wet fabric clinging to her frame. Her face was half hidden in shadows, but the lines around her eyes told a story Daniel didn't yet know. He looked away. He didn't mean to stare, but something inside him didn't let go. He had seen that look before, on his own reflection in the mirror, the night he buried his wife. The look of someone carrying too much, pretending to be strong but fraying inside. He thought about leaving it alone. It wasn't his business. The world was full of people drowning in silence. You couldn't save them all. But then Lily whispered again, softer this time. "Daddy, can she come with us?" Her innocence pierced through him like a blade. Daniel hesitated. He'd learned to be cautious. Trust didn't come easy anymore, not since loss carved holes into his life. But the soldier looked so young, barely older than a college student, though her shoulders carried something heavy, something that had aged her far past her years. He stood, rain clung to his jacket. His boots splashed through shallow puddles as he crossed the small distance. The soldier lifted her head, startled by his approach. Her eyes tired, glassy, haunted. He stopped just a step away. "You waiting on someone?" His voice was gentle, careful not to intrude too much. She forced a smile that broke almost instantly. "No, just the bus." Her voice cracked. It wasn't just exhaustion, it was defeat trying to disguise itself as casual. "Trying to get somewhere cheap for the night," she added, almost apologetic. Daniel studied her for a heartbeat. Then the words left him before he could stop them. "You're coming with me." The soldier blinked, confusion tightening her face. "I don't even know you." "I don't know you either," Daniel admitted. His tone was quiet but certain. "But I know what tired eyes look like. You fought for people like me. Tonight, let me fight for you." There was no rehearsed kindness in his words. Just raw sincerity, the kind you can't fake. For a moment she seemed ready to refuse. Her hand twitched toward her duffel like she might stand, apologize, and disappear into the rain. But then something shifted. A crack in the wall she had built around herself. Her lips trembled. Her eyes softened, though they carried storms. "Okay." The word was so fragile it nearly drowned in the rain, but it was enough. Daniel nodded once, quietly relieved. He motioned toward Lily, who had been watching with wide eyes. The little girl gave a shy wave, as if inviting her into a circle she didn't know she'd needed. The soldier, her name still a mystery, lifted the duffel and followed. That night Daniel opened the door of a small, worn apartment. Not much to look at, cracked wallpaper, second-hand furniture, dishes waiting in the sink. But it was warm, and for someone like her it was shelter. Lily hurried to show her drawings taped to the fridge. Crooked rainbows, stick figures of her and Daddy, a son that was always too big. The soldier stood quietly, taking it in, her soaked boots dripping onto the mat. Dinner was leftover pasta reheated in a pan. Nothing special. But when she sat at the table, Daniel noticed the way she stared at the food as though it were more than a meal, as though it was belonging. as though she hadn't felt this simple comfort in months. She ate slowly, almost cautiously. Lily chattered about school, about how her teacher said she could draw a horse better than anyone in class. Daniel watched, speaking little, letting the silence stretch where it needed to. For the first time in a long time, laughter returned to the table. Not loud, but enough to remind Daniel that silence didn't have to mean loneliness. Later, as the night deepened, Daniel guided her to the small guest room. It smelled faintly of lavender from sheets his late wife had bought years ago. He wished he could say more, ask more, but words felt too heavy. So he only said, "Good night." Hours later, when the house was still, Daniel passed by the guest room door. He heard it then, a soft sound muffled by the pillow. Not sleep, not breathing, crying. He stopped, his hand hovering near the doorknob. Part of him wanted to open it, to say something, to tell her she wasn't alone. But another part knew better. Some wounds can't be rushed. Some silence needs to be honored. So he stood there for a moment, listening, before walking away. In the living room, he sat alone in the dim glow of the lamp. His own grief stirred, familiar and sharp, yet tonight felt different. He wasn't the only one carrying it, and somehow that shared weight felt lighter. He didn't know her name, he didn't know her story, but something told him this wasn't the end of their crossing. This was only the beginning. And in her room, the soldier wiped her eyes against the pillow, staring at the ceiling in the dark. She had promised herself she wouldn't break, not in front of strangers. But tonight, a stranger had opened a door she hadn't known she was waiting for. She whispered to no one, voice trembling, "Thank you." The rain eased outside, tapping softer against the glass. Daniel leaned back in his chair, staring at the photo of his late wife on the shelf. He thought about the words he had spoken at the bus stop. They had come out without warning, as if someone else had whispered them through him. "You're coming with me." And for the first time in years, he wondered if maybe those words hadn't just saved her. Maybe, in some way, they had saved him too. How long could a stranger stay before they felt like family? Morning sunlight crept through the blinds, casting pale stripes across the small living room. Daniel stirred awake on the couch, his neck stiff, his back sore. He hadn't meant to fall asleep there, but after hearing the soldier's muffled sobs through the guest room door last night, sleep had come slower than usual. The clatter of dishes woke him fully. He sat up, rubbing his eyes. In the kitchen, the soldier stood barefoot, her hair pulled back in a simple knot, sleeves rolled up. She was rinsing plates as if she belonged there. For a moment, Daniel just watched. Her posture was still rigid, military in its precision, but her movements were careful, deliberate. She washed each plate as though afraid of breaking it. "You didn't have to do that," he said finally, his voice rough from sleep. She turned, startled, her hand freezing mid-rinse. "Sorry," she muttered. "Old habit." Daniel smiled faintly, not used to being taken care of. The soldier gave a small shrug, eyes dropping back to the sink. Silence stretched again, but not the uncomfortable kind. More like two people standing at the edge of a conversation neither knew how to begin. It was Lily who broke it. She padded into the room, hair tangled from sleep, clutching her stuffed rabbit. She blinked at the soldier, then at her dad. "Is she still here?" Daniel chuckled. "Looks like it." The soldier dried her hands on a towel and knelt to Lily's height. "Only if that's okay with you." Lily tilted her head, studying her with the seriousness only children could manage. Then she nodded. "You can stay, but you have to try my pancakes." The soldier laughed, quiet, genuine, surprising even herself. "Deal." It wasn't much, but it was a start. That day stretched differently than most. Daniel worked his morning shift, but the thought of a stranger in his apartment kept tugging at him. He wasn't reckless. He knew the risks. Yet something in her eyes last night, something raw and unguarded, told him she wasn't a threat. She was broken, yes, but not dangerous. When he came home, he found Lily on the floor, crayons scattered, her new friend beside her sketching clumsy outlines of a horse. Daniel leaned on the doorway, arms crossed, watching as Lily laughed at the soldier's terrible drawing. "You're worse than me," Lily teased. "Hey, I was trained for a lot of things," the soldier said, feigning indignation. "But art wasn't one of them." Daniel cleared his throat, stepping in. "Guess you'll need lessons." She looked up, smiling faintly, but there was hesitation too. Like every smile came with an unspoken apology. Later, as Lily prepared for bed, Daniel lingered by the kitchen table where the soldier now sat, fingers tracing the rim of a mug. "You never told me your name," he said softly. Her hand stilled. After a pause, she whispered, "Emma." The name carried weight, as if she hadn't spoken it aloud in a long time. "Emma," Daniel repeated, testing it, grounding it. "It's good to meet you." Her lips curved, but her eyes remained distant. Over the next few days, Emma settled into a rhythm she hadn't expected. Mornings with Lily, afternoons helping with chores, evenings when Daniel returned home weary but no longer to an empty apartment. She cooked sometimes, small meals that reminded her of home. And every so often, when she thought no one was looking, her guard slipped, revealing pieces of a woman who once laughed easily. But shadows lingered. At night, Daniel sometimes heard her packing the guest room. Once, he caught the muffled sound of a nightmare, a sharp gasp, the creak of the bed as if she'd sat bolt upright. He wanted to ask, to understand, but something in her silence warned him not to. One evening, as Lily drew at the table, Daniel found Emma on the balcony, smoking. The rain had cleared, leaving the city lights sharp against the night. Smoke curled around her, disappearing into the air. "Didn't take you for a smoker," he said, leaning on the doorframe. Emma exhaled slowly. "I didn't, not until overseas." Her voice was flat, clipped, but heavy. Daniel didn't press, he just nodded. "We all pick up habits." She flicked the cigarette away, her jaw tightening. "Some habits don't let go." The words hung between them. She wasn't talking about cigarettes. When she finally turned, her eyes shimmered, not with tears but with the effort of holding them back. "I don't want to be a burden," she murmured. "You're not," Daniel said firmly. "You don't know that." "I know enough," he countered. "Family isn't just blood, it's who shows up, and you showed up." Her lips parted, as if to argue, but no sound came. She looked away instead, staring at the city like it held answers she couldn't find. Inside, Lily called for a bedtime story. Emma went, her shoulders softening as the little girl pulled her onto the bed. She listened, wide-eyed, to Emma's tale of a soldier who faced storms not with weapons but with courage. Daniel stood in the doorway, unseen, listening too. Later that night, when Lily was asleep and Emma retreated to her room, Daniel sat alone in the kitchen. He stared at the unpaid bills stacked on the counter. His second job had threatened to cut his hours after he missed a shift when Lily got sick. He was running on fumes, and now another mouth to feed. He should have been worried. He should have told Emma she couldn't stay. But when he pictured her walking out into the night, her duffel slung over her shoulder, her tired eyes braced for loneliness again, he couldn't do it. Somehow, the thought of losing her felt heavier than the thought of keeping her. Days blurred into weeks. Emma remained. She started walking Lily to school, waiting at the gate like she belonged among the other parents. Some stared curious about the soldier in uniform, the one who never quite smiled. Emma didn't notice, or maybe she did and she just didn't care. At the grocery store, she caught the stares too. People whispered. Some nodded respectfully. Others turned away, uncomfortable with reminders of wars they pretended didn't exist. Emma carried the weight of those looks quietly, like another pack on her shoulders. One evening, Daniel found her staring at her duffel bag in the guest room, hands clenched at her sides. "Thinking of leaving?" he asked gently. She flinched, not realizing he had been watching. Her throat worked as she tried to answer. Finally, she whispered, "I don't want to make things harder for you." Daniel stepped closer. "Emma, you're not making things harder, you're making it bearable." Her eyes met his, searching, almost desperate. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." "Because someone once did the same for me," Daniel said quietly. His voice carried the weight of memory, of a hospital room, of hands holding his when grief threatened to drown him. "And because I can see you're worth it." The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was fragile, like glass, clear but breakable. Emma looked down, her shoulders trembling. Then she sank onto the bed, her hands covering her face. For the first time, she let the tears come without hiding them. Daniel didn't touch her. He didn't try to fix it. He simply stayed. Sometimes presence was more powerful than words. And as the night wore on, Emma whispered pieces of her story into the darkness, half sentences, broken images, fragments of battles she couldn't fully name. The desert heat, the sound of rotors overhead, a friend who didn't come home, letters unanswered, a fiancé who stopped waiting. She broke, then steadied, then broke again. And Daniel listened, silent, steady, anchoring her with nothing more than his presence. By the time dawn broke, Emma was asleep on the bed, her face softened, her breathing even. Daniel watched for a moment, then quietly pulled a blanket over her. In that stillness, he realized something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. What happens when a stranger starts to feel like the missing piece you didn't know you needed? The weeks rolled forward, quiet but relentless, like a tide you couldn't stop. Daniel fell into a strange new rhythm, mornings that began not with silence, but with the faint sound of Emma's footsteps moving around the kitchen, evenings that no longer felt like climbing into an empty home, but into a space where laughter sometimes dared to return. He found himself listening for her presence when she wasn't there. Emma, for her part, lived carefully, as though afraid every moment might be her last in this fragile sanctuary. She never took more than she needed. She folded sheets with military precision. She left notes on the counter when she walked Lily to school. And yet slowly, the walls she had built began to lower. One Friday evening, Lily sat cross-legged on the living room rug, crayons scattered, working on a drawing of her new family. Daniel leaned against the doorway, tired after a long shift, his hands sore from lifting boxes. Emma sat across from Lily, trying and failing to braid the little girl's hair. "Too tight," Lily giggled, pulling away. Emma laughed, shaking her head. "Okay, okay, you'll have to teach me." "Daddy does it better." Daniel raised an eyebrow, amused. "Didn't know I had competition." Emma's cheeks warmed faintly, but she didn't look away. For a fleeting moment, Daniel saw something in her expression he couldn't name. Vulnerability, maybe, or the faint outline of a woman remembering what it felt like to belong. But as easily as it appeared, it vanished. Her eyes drifted toward the window, her posture stiffening. Later that night, Daniel found her sitting alone on the balcony again, cigarette glowing faintly in the dark. "Long day?" he asked, stepping outside. She didn't answer right away. The smoke curled upward, fragile against the night sky. Finally, she murmured, "Some days feel longer than others." Daniel waited, giving her space. "I dream about it," she whispered. "The desert, the noise, the way the air smelled before everything went wrong. It's like I'm still there." Her voice cracked at the last word, and she swallowed hard, blinking fast. Daniel leaned on the railing beside her. "You don't have to tell me more." She shot him a sideways glance. "And if I want to?" He met her eyes steady. "Then I'll listen." Her lips trembled, but she didn't speak again. Instead, she stubbed out the cigarette and walked inside. That night Daniel lay awake long after Lily had drifted into dreams. He thought about Emma, her silence, her shadows, the way she flinched when a car backfired outside. He knew he couldn't fix her past, but he also knew he couldn't let her face it alone. The next morning he woke to find Emma cooking breakfast. The smell of eggs and toast filled the apartment. Lily sat at the table, grinning. "Emma's better than you at pancakes, Daddy." Daniel smirked. "I'll allow it." Emma rolled her eyes but smiled softly, sliding a plate toward him. For a while, the kitchen filled with something that almost resembled peace. But reality never stayed far away. The bills stacked higher. His second job threatened to cut his hours again, and Lily's school sent home another note about overdue fees for extracurricular activities. Daniel sat at the table one night, head in his hands, the weight of everything pressing down. Emma walked in, holding a folded piece of paper. She hesitated, then set it in front of him. "What's this?" Daniel asked. "A job application," she said quietly. "Community center downtown. They need someone to run programs for veterans. I think I could do it." Daniel looked at her, surprised. "You sure you're ready?" Emma's jaw tightened. "I'm not sure of anything, but I can't just sit here while you're drowning. I need to pull my weight." There was steel in her voice, determination born not of pride but of survival. Daniel saw it and knew better than to argue. The next week she started. The work was small at first, helping other veterans navigate paperwork, connecting them with resources. But something shifted in her. She came home with stories, not about war, but about people like her. People broken but still standing. People who made her realize she wasn't alone in her fight. One evening, she told Daniel about a man who hadn't spoken in months, but at the center, he finally whispered his daughter's name. Emma's eyes glistened as she recounted it. "It's strange," she admitted. "Sometimes helping them helps me, like their healing makes mine possible." Daniel nodded, his chest tightening. He wanted to tell her how proud he was, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he just said, "That's good, Emma, that's really good." But even with progress, shadows lingered. One night Daniel woke to the sound of screaming. He rushed to Emma's room, heart pounding, only to find her thrashing in bed, drenched in sweat, her face twisted in terror. "Emma," he called, shaking her gently. Her eyes snapped open, wild, disoriented. For a terrifying moment she didn't recognize him. She shoved him back, breathing hard, fists clenched like she was ready to fight. "It's me," Daniel said quickly, hands raised. "It's Daniel, you're safe." Her gaze darted, then softened as reality returned. Tears streaked down her face. She collapsed forward, trembling. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean." Daniel shook his head. "Don't apologize." She buried her face in her hands, sobbing quietly. Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, not touching her, but close enough for her to know she wasn't alone. When her breathing finally slowed, she whispered, "It's always the same. The explosion, the silence after, and then nothing." Daniel swallowed hard, his heart aching. He wanted to promise her it would get better, but he couldn't. Not when he knew grief didn't vanish. It only learned to live beside you. Instead, he said, "You're here now, that's what matters." She nodded faintly, though her eyes still carried storms. The next morning, Emma avoided his gaze. She moved through the kitchen like a ghost, quiet, withdrawn. But Lily noticed. Children always do. "Emma," Lily said softly, tugging at her sleeve. "Are you okay?" Emma knelt, forcing a smile. "Yeah, kiddo, just tired." Lily frowned, then wrapped her arms around her neck. Emma froze for a heartbeat, then hugged her back, eyes closing. That simple embrace did more than any words could. Later that day, as Emma walked Lily to school, Daniel watched from the window. He saw the way Emma held Lily's hand, the way she bent down to listen when the girl spoke, the way her face softened in those moments. And for the first time, Daniel realized something frightening. He wasn't just helping Emma heal. He was starting to need her, too. How do you hold a life together when every piece feels like it's slipping away? The first snow of the season fell soft and silent, blanketing the city in pale light. From the window, Daniel watched Lily press her handprints into the foggy glass, giggling at the shapes she left behind. Behind her, Emma sat at the table, sorting through papers from the community center. It had been nearly 3 months since that rainy night at the bus stop. 3 months since Emma had stepped into his home, uninvited yet needed more than either of them knew. She had gone from stranger to something Daniel couldn't quite define. Not family, not yet, but not temporary either. Something in between. Something fragile but real. But with every small joy, pressure mounted. The rent had gone up. His hours at the warehouse had been cut. The numbers didn't add up, no matter how many times he ran them. And yet he couldn't bring himself to say the words out loud, not to Emma, not to Lily. Especially not to Lily. "Daddy, can Emma come to my recital?" Lily asked suddenly, spinning around from the window. Daniel blinked, pulled from his thoughts. "Of course, if she wants to." Emma looked up, startled, as though unsure she'd been included. Yeah, I'd love to." Lily squealed, running to hug her, while Emma's eyes softened, betraying the flicker of disbelief that anyone still wanted her around. That night, as Lily slept, Daniel found Emma in the kitchen, staring at the refrigerator door. Drawings, magnets, overdue notices taped in the corner. "You okay?" he asked quietly. She hesitated, then pointed to one of Lily's newest drawings. 3 figures holding hands beneath a crooked rainbow. A girl with pigtails, a tall man, and a woman in uniform. "That's us," Emma said softly. Her finger traced the lines. "She put me in the picture." Daniel's chest tightened. "She sees you as part of her world." Emma's voice wavered. "What if I can't stay in it?" The question hung heavy, sharper than either of them wanted to admit. The next week, Daniel's second job called again. Another missed shift. Another warning. He came home late, exhaustion carved into his face, only to find Emma waiting at the table. "You're killing yourself," she said bluntly. He dropped into the chair, rubbing his temples. "What choice do I have?" "You can let me help more." "You're already helping." "Not enough," Emma shot back, her voice cracking. "You've given me more than I deserve, and I'm just taking. I can't." "Stop," Daniel interrupted firmly. He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto hers. "You're not taking, you're surviving, and you're giving Lily something I can't. She lights up with you. Don't tell me that's not enough." Emma's throat worked as she tried to swallow the lump rising there. For once, she had no argument. But still, guilt gnawed at her. At the community center, she threw herself into work. She stayed late, organizing events, listening to broken voices spill stories of wars most people didn't want to hear. In those veterans, she saw herself, haunted, displaced, searching for a reason to keep going. One afternoon, she sat with a woman named Carla, a former medic who'd lost her brother in combat. Carla's hands shook as she described the silence after his last breath. Emma reached across the table, taking her trembling fingers into her own. "You're not alone," she whispered, and for the first time she realized she meant it. But even with moments of strength, her nights remained fragile. The nightmares didn't fade. The cigarette count grew. Daniel noticed, but he didn't push. He simply made sure there was always coffee in the morning, always quiet space when she needed it. And yet, beneath his patience, he was unraveling too. One evening, Daniel came home late to find Lily asleep on the couch, her backpack still on, her homework untouched. Emma sat beside her, reading quietly from one of Lily's school books. When Daniel stepped inside, she looked up, concern flickering across her face. "You okay?" He wanted to say yes. He wanted to tell her he was fine, but the truth cracked through his voice before he could stop it. "No, I'm not." Emma stood slowly, setting the book down. "Talk to me." Daniel shook his head, packing. "I'm failing, Emma. I'm trying to keep this roof over her head, trying to give her something normal, and it's never enough. Every day I feel like I'm one step from losing it all." Emma's chest ached hearing it. She crossed the room, stopping just in front of him. "You're not failing." He laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "Feels like it." Her eyes softened, her voice steady. "You're standing. That's more than most can do. Do you know how many men I've seen crumble under half of what you carry? You're not failing, Daniel, you're fighting." Her words sank deep, cutting through the noise in his head. He looked at her, really looked and saw not just the soldier, not just the stranger who'd stumbled into his life, but someone who understood what it meant to break and still keep moving. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Lily stirred, muttering in her sleep. Emma bent down, adjusting the blanket around her small frame. She pressed a soft kiss to the top of her head, almost instinctively, before freezing as if realizing what she'd done. Daniel saw it, the tenderness, the fear, the hope she didn't dare admit. In that quiet moment, something shifted between them. But just as quickly, reality snapped back. The next day, Emma was called into the director's office at the community center. A budget cut, reduced hours. She left with her jaw tight, fists clenched, the familiar taste of disappointment settling on her tongue. She wanted to tell Daniel, but when she saw him that evening, tired, shoulders slumped, bills stacked high, she couldn't add to his weight. Instead, she carried it alone. That night, as snow fell heavy outside, Emma stood at the window, staring at her reflection in the glass. She barely recognized herself anymore. Not the soldier who once marched with certainty. Not the woman who had dreamed of a future that never came. Just someone caught in between, trying to heal, trying not to fall apart again. Daniel found her there, silent. He didn't ask what she was thinking. He just stood beside her, shoulder to shoulder, their reflections overlapping in the glass. And for the first time in years, Emma whispered something she hadn't dared say out loud. "I want to stay." Daniel turned, startled. Emma's eyes shone, steady but vulnerable. "If you'll let me, I want this. You, Lily, a home." The words trembled, raw and unpolished but true. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He wanted to tell her he wanted the same, that her being there wasn't a burden but a gift. But before he could speak, Lily's sleepy voice echoed from the hallway. "Daddy, Emma." Emma turned, wiping quickly at her eyes, her walls rebuilding. Daniel's words died in his throat. But deep inside, he knew the truth now. She wasn't just passing through. She had already become part of them. Why did the recital feel more like a battlefield than a school event? The gymnasium buzzed with chatter, parents clustered in small groups, children fidgeting in colorful costumes. Fold-out chairs creaked under the weight of restless anticipation. Daniel sat in the second row, Lily's coat draped over his lap. Beside him, Emma shifted uncomfortably, her posture too straight, her eyes scanning the crowd like she was still on patrol. It wasn't her first time in public since coming back, but it felt different tonight. Different because this wasn't just her. This was Lily. This was Daniel. This was her being seen not as a soldier or a stranger, but as part of something she wasn't sure she deserved. Parents whispered. Emma heard them. The way their voices dropped when she passed, the glances toward her uniform jacket, the curious tilt of heads. Some were respectful, nodding quietly. Others were wary, their eyes asking questions they would never voice. Daniel leaned closer. "Ignore them." She didn't answer. She kept her gaze fixed forward, jaw tight, until the lights dimmed and the chatter quieted. Lily walked onto the stage, her small hands clutching the edges of her paper costume. Her eyes searched the crowd until they landed on her father, then drifted to Emma. She smiled, wide and unguarded, and waved. Emma's chest constricted. She hadn't realized how much she needed that simple gesture, acceptance, without hesitation, from a child who saw her as more than her scars. The recital began. Children stumbled through lines, sang off-key, forgot cues. Parents clapped anyway, phones raised high to capture every imperfect moment. Daniel clapped too, smiling proudly, though the exhaustion in his eyes betrayed him. When Lily's turn came, she stepped forward to recite a short poem about courage. Her voice trembled at first, then grew stronger as she glanced at Emma. "This is for my dad, and for my friend Emma," she said, clear and certain. The audience turned. Dozens of eyes shifted toward the soldier sitting beside Daniel. Emma froze, her breath caught in her throat. Daniel placed a hand on her arm, steadying her. And then Lily spoke the lines, simple but piercing. Courage is not loud. It's quiet. It's choosing to stand, even when you feel small. It's holding someone's hand and not letting go. The gym erupted in applause. Parents smiled. Children cheered. But Emma sat still, her hands trembling, her eyes glistening. No one had ever said words like that for her. When Lily bowed and scurried off stage, Emma clapped at last, her heart thudding painfully against her ribs. She wanted to stand. She wanted to hug Lily the second she came off stage. But she stayed in her seat, frozen in the unfamiliar weight of being seen, truly seen, for something other than survival. Afterward in the hallway, Lily ran straight into her arms. "Did you hear me? Did you hear what I said?" Emma crouched, pulling her clothes. "I heard, kiddo, and I'll never forget it." Daniel watched, his chest tightening. He had always feared Lily would grow up carrying only loss, but tonight he saw something else, a bond forming that could give her the love she deserved. But reality didn't pause for long. On the walk home, Daniel's phone buzzed. Another message from the warehouse manager, another warning about missed shifts. He shoved the phone back into his pocket, his jaw tight. Emma noticed trouble. "Nothing I can't handle." She didn't believe him, but she didn't push. Not yet. The next day, trouble became unavoidable. Daniel came home to find an eviction notice taped to the door. His stomach dropped, his hands shaking as he tore it free. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at the paper, unable to move. Emma walked in moments later, carrying groceries. She stopped when she saw his face. "What is it?" He slid the notice across the table. Her eyes scanned it, her lips parting. "Daniel." "I tried," he whispered. His voice cracked raw. "I really tried." Emma set the bags down, her hands clenching. "We'll figure it out." "There is no we," Daniel snapped, more harshly than he intended. "This is my responsibility, my mess. I brought you into it. You shouldn't have to." "Stop," Emma cut in, her voice sharp. Her eyes burned with a fire he hadn't seen before. "Don't you dare shut me out, not after everything. You think you're the only one who's carried weight. You think you're the only one breaking. Daniel, we're in this together, whether you like it or not." Her words hung in the air, fierce and unflinching. Daniel's anger crumbled into exhaustion. He dropped his head into his hands, breathing hard. Emma reached across the table, her fingers brushing his wrist. "You're not alone," she whispered. "Not anymore." For a moment, silence reigned. Then Lily's voice piped up from the hallway. "Are we moving?" Daniel looked up, startled. Lily stood there clutching her stuffed rabbit, her eyes wide with fear. "No, sweetheart," Emma said quickly, crossing to her side. She knelt, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's face. "We're not going anywhere. We'll figure it out." Lily searched her face, then nodded, trusting her. Emma held her close, whispering reassurance, even as doubt gnawed at her own chest. That night, after Lily fell asleep, Emma and Daniel sat in the dim light of the living room. The eviction notice lay between them, an unspoken reminder of the fragility of everything they had built. Daniel finally broke the silence. "I don't know how to keep this together." Emma leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "You keep standing, that's how, and I'll stand with you." He turned to her, eyes searching, voice low. "Why? You could walk away, start over somewhere else. Why stay here with us?" Emma met his gaze, steady and certain. "Because I already walked away once, from people who loved me, from myself. I won't do it again." Her words carried no hesitation, no fear, just truth. Daniel swallowed hard. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to believe he didn't have to carry the weight alone. And somewhere, deep inside, he realized what Lily had already known for weeks. Emma wasn't just passing through. She was home. What happens when the walls you've built to protect yourself start closing in instead? The notice on the table didn't disappear. It sat there like a wound that wouldn't close, a constant reminder of how close everything was to slipping away. Daniel tried to shove it into a drawer, but the weight followed him everywhere, on the bus to work, in the warehouse aisles, even in the laughter of his daughter. He had promised her stability, and now that promise was cracking. Emma noticed. She always noticed. The way his shoulders slumped lower each night. The way his eyes darkened when he thought no one was looking. She wanted to help, but every time she tried, Daniel brushed her off with the same words. It's my job, my responsibility. Pride, it clung to him like armor, the same way silence clung to her. Different shields, same purpose. At the community center, Emma poured herself into work. She stayed late, talked with veterans who had lost more than homes, men who had lost limbs, women who had lost families, soldiers who had lost their sense of self. Each story chipped at her, but it also carved a strange strength she hadn't known she still carried. One afternoon, after a group session, a man named Ron approached her. He was older, his eyes tired but kind. "You've got away with them," he said, nodding toward the room. Emma shrugged. "I just listen." "That's more than most can do." He studied her for a moment. "But you're carrying your own weight too. You ever think of letting someone listen to you?" The question caught her off guard. She opened her mouth to deflect, but the words didn't come. She forced a smile instead, excused herself, and left before the dam inside her could crack. That evening Daniel came home later than usual, his face pale, his hands shaking. Emma met him at the door. "What happened?" He shoved past her, dropping his bag on the floor. "They cut my hours again, said they can't afford to keep me full-time." Emma's chest tightened. "Daniel." "I'll find something else," he snapped, though his voice cracked. He paced the small living room, running his hands through his hair. "I have to. I can't let Lily down. I can't." "You won't," Emma said firmly. She stepped in front of him, forcing him to stop. "You're not alone in this." "Yes, I am." His voice rose, louder than he meant. Lily stirred in her room, and both froze until the silence settled again. Then, softer, almost broken, Daniel whispered, "This isn't your fight, Emma." Her jaw clenched. "It became my fight the moment you told me, 'You're coming with me. You don't get to decide where it ends.'" The words hit him like a blow. He looked at her, and for the first time, he didn't see the soldier she had been or the guest in his home. He saw someone who refused to walk away, even when everything else told her to. But pride still whispered in his ear. The following week, Daniel took on odd jobs, moving furniture, fixing roofs, anything that paid cash. He came home bruised, hands blistered, his body worn thin. Emma patched him up quietly, her fingers careful, her eyes burning with words she didn't say. "Why are you doing this to yourself?" she asked one night, tapping his wrist. "Because it's what fathers do," he muttered. Her voice dropped. "And what about what friends do? What about what family does?" The word family hung between them, sharp and undeniable. Daniel didn't respond. He couldn't. Meanwhile, Emma carried her own storm. The nightmares worsened. The cigarettes multiplied. She found herself standing outside in the freezing cold at 3 a.m., staring at the streetlights until her fingers went numb. One night Daniel found her there. "You'll freeze," he said softly, draping his jacket over her shoulders. Emma flinched at his touch, then stilled, staring at the street. "Sometimes I think I don't deserve this. You, Lily, any of it." Daniel's heart ached. "Why would you think that?" Her voice cracked. "Because I left people behind. Because I came home when they didn't. Because I can't close my eyes without seeing their faces." He stepped closer, his voice steady. "Survivor's guilt." Her head snapped toward him. "Don't call it that." "But that's what it is," he said gently, "and you don't carry it alone anymore." She swallowed hard, her walls crumbling. For a moment she leaned against him, her forehead resting on his chest. Her breath came in shallow bursts, like she was afraid to let it out. Daniel didn't move. He just held the silence with her, letting it be enough. The next morning, Emma made a decision. At the community center, she asked her supervisor if she could take on more hours, even unpaid ones. "I need purpose," she admitted. "More than a paycheck, I need to be useful." The supervisor studied her, then nodded. "We'll find a way." And so she did. She started running workshops, leading groups, helping veterans who reminded her of herself on her worst days. She came home drained, but there was light in her eyes, a fragile hope, but hope nonetheless. Meanwhile, Daniel's health began to falter. One night, after a grueling day of side jobs, he stumbled through the door and nearly collapsed. Emma caught him, panic surging through her. "You need to stop," she said fiercely, easing him onto the couch. "I can't," he rasped. "If I stop, we lose everything." Emma knelt beside him, her hands trembling. "You're going to lose yourself first. And then what? What does Lily have if she loses you too?" The words cut deep. Daniel closed his eyes, shame washing over him. Emma's voice softened. "Let me help, please. Stop trying to carry this alone." For once, Daniel didn't argue. He just nodded, too tired to resist. That night, Emma stayed awake long after he fell asleep. She sat in the dark, staring at the eviction notice still folded on the table. Her fingers traced the edges, her mind racing. She couldn't let them lose this, not after everything. She didn't know how yet, but she would find a way. Because this wasn't just Daniel's fight anymore. It was hers too. How much can one promise carry before it finally breaks? The winter deepened. Nights grew colder, days shorter, and the weight of the eviction notice pressed heavier against their hearts. Daniel worked when he could, but the strain showed in every crease of his face, every tremor in his tired hands. Emma saw it. Lily saw it too, though she never said a word. Children know more than they let on. Emma began rising earlier, slipping out before dawn. At first, Daniel thought it was just longer hours at the community center. But soon he noticed the change. Her uniform jacket gone in the mornings, replaced with plain work clothes. Calluses forming on her hands again. The faint smell of grease clinging to her sleeves. One evening, when she returned later than usual, Daniel finally asked, "Where have you been?" Emma hesitated, setting down the grocery bag she carried. "Working." "You already work." "Another job," she admitted. Her voice was calm, steady, but her eyes betrayed her fatigue. "Warehouse across town, night shifts." Daniel froze. "Emma." "Don't," she cut in quickly. "You've been breaking yourself in half to keep us standing. I can do the same." He shook his head. "You don't have to." "I want to," she interrupted, firmer now. "Daniel, I need to, for you, for Lily, for me. I'm not useless. I won't sit back while you destroy yourself." Her voice cracked, raw with desperation. For a long moment, silence hung heavy between them. Finally, Daniel sighed, rubbing his temples. I don't want to lose you too." Emma's eyes softened. "You won't." But even as she said it, a shadow flickered across her face. She wasn't sure if she believed it herself. The next weeks blurred in exhaustion. Daniel's shifts, Emma's double work. Lily caught in between, carrying her backpack to the community center some evenings when neither adult could be home on time. The three of them orbited one another like weary satellites, bound together but stretched thin. Then came the storm. It was a Thursday night when Emma arrived late from the warehouse, snow clinging to her boots, her breath sharp with cold. She stepped inside to find Lily curled on the couch, clutching her rabbit, eyes red from tears. Daniel knelt in front of her, his own face pale with fear. "What happened?" Emma demanded, rushing forward. Daniel looked up, his voice shaking. "She had trouble breathing. I almost called an ambulance. It eased after a while, but—" He broke off, guilt ripping through his words. "I wasn't enough. I didn't know what to do." Emma's chest tightened. She crouched beside Lily, brushing the girl's hair back gently. "Hey, kiddo, you okay now?" Lily nodded weakly, leaning into her. Emma held her close, her heart pounding. She knew this wasn't just a one-time scare. She'd seen enough in the field to recognize warning signs. Later, when Lily finally slept, Daniel slumped into the chair, his head in his hands. I failed her. I couldn't protect her. Emma stood across the room, fists clenched. You didn't fail. You did what you could. That's all any of us can do. His eyes lifted, filled with anguish. You don't understand, I promised her. After her mom, I promised I'd keep her safe, always, and tonight I couldn't. Emma's throat tightened. She wanted to tell him she understood more than he knew, that she too had made promises she couldn't keep, promises to brothers in arms who never made it home. Instead, she whispered, You're human, Daniel, not invincible. She doesn't need you to be perfect. She just needs you to be here. The words cut through him. Slowly he exhaled, the weight of years pressing out of his chest. But something else lingered in Emma's mind that night, the sight of Lily gasping, fragile, small. It was too close, too familiar, and it lit a fire in her. The next morning she went to the community center early. She spoke to her supervisor, pushing past hesitation. We need to expand. Medical support, counseling, families, not just veterans. People are breaking and we're patching holes instead of fixing foundations. Her supervisor sighed. Emma, I admire your fire, but we don't have the budget. Then I'll find it, she snapped. Grants, donors, volunteers, whatever it takes, just give me the chance. The supervisor studied her, then nodded slowly. You really think you can do this? Emma's voice was steady. I have to. That night she told Daniel. He looked at her, half proud, half terrified. Emma, you're already carrying too much. She shook her head. I'm carrying with you, that's different. For a moment neither spoke. Then Daniel reached across the table, his hand brushing hers. I don't know what I'd do without you. Emma froze, her breath catching. She wanted to answer, to say something that matched the weight of his words, but fear held her tongue. Because she knew what it felt like to lose, and she wasn't sure she could survive losing again. A week later, the recital photos arrived from the school. Lily brought them home, excitedly spreading them across the table. In every picture, her smile beamed wide, and in the audience, blurry but visible, sat Daniel and Emma, side by side. Lily tapped the photo, grinning. See, we're all together. Emma stared at the picture, her heart aching. She wanted to believe it. She wanted to believe she belonged. But deep inside, the voice of doubt whispered still, what if it doesn't last? That night, as snow fell heavy outside, Emma stood at the window again. Daniel joined her, silent at first. Then softly he asked, when are you going to believe it? She frowned. Believe what? That you're not temporary, he said. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed his own fear. That you're already part of this family. Emma turned, startled. Her lips parted, but no words came. The weight of his truth pressed deep into her chest, deeper than any wound she'd carried from war. And for the first time since coming home, she let herself hope that maybe, just maybe, she could be more than a survivor. Maybe she could be loved. How do you know when a home has finally chosen you? Spring arrived slowly, melting away the hard edges of winter. The snow receded, the air softened, and with it, something inside their small apartment shifted too. The weight didn't disappear. Bills still stacked high, exhaustion still gnawed at Daniel's bones, and Emma's nights still carried storms. But there was something new threading through it all. Belonging. It showed in little ways. In the way Lily ran first to Emma when she got home from school, holding up drawings with pride. In the way Daniel leaned back at dinner sometimes, letting Emma's quiet voice fill the silence he no longer felt responsible for. In the way Emma finally laughed, not forced, but real, the kind of laugh that hadn't touched her in years. But with every step forward came the whisper of doubt. Emma carried it always. Doubt that she could stay. Doubt that she deserved this fragile peace. Doubt that at any moment it could be ripped away. The eviction notice still sat folded in the drawer. The warehouse still hadn't restored Daniel's hours. And though Emma juggled shifts at the community center and the warehouse across town, money remained thin as thread. One night Daniel sat at the table, head bent over numbers that wouldn't stretch. Emma walked in, setting down her jacket. "How bad?" she asked. He rubbed his eyes, sighing. "Bad enough." She leaned against the counter, studying him. "We'll find a way." He shook his head. "I don't know how much longer I can keep saying that." Her chest tightened. She crossed the room, standing beside him. "Then stop saying it alone. Let me carry it too." He looked up, his eyes tired but searching. "Why, Emma, why do you care so much? You don't owe us anything." Her voice was quiet but firm. "Because you gave me a home when I had none. You gave me something worth fighting for again, and I'm not walking away from that." The words sank deep. Daniel didn't respond, but the way his hand lingered near hers on the table said enough. A week later, Emma's supervisor at the community center called her in. The funding proposal she'd fought for had been approved: grants for expanded programs, resources for veterans and families alike. For the first time in months, Emma felt her chest lift with something unfamiliar. Hope. She came home that evening, practically running up the stairs. Daniel was fixing dinner, Lily humming at the table. Emma burst in, breathless, eyes shining. "They said yes," she blurted. "The funding came through, we're expanding, real programs, real change." Daniel turned, startled by the light in her face. "Emma, that's incredible." Lily grinned. "Does that mean you're the boss now?" Emma laughed, ruffling her hair. "Not the boss, just someone who finally gets to help." For once, the future didn't look like a wall. It looked like a door. But not all battles ended clean. That night Emma woke again, drenched in sweat, her chest heaving from another nightmare. The explosion, the silence, the faces, always the same. She stumbled to the balcony, lighting a cigarette with shaking hands. Daniel followed minutes later, wordless. He leaned against the railing beside her, the cold air biting at his skin. "You don't have to hide it," he said quietly. She exhaled smoke, her hands trembling. "It never goes away." "No," he agreed, "but maybe it doesn't have to destroy you either." She turned, eyes wet. "What if it already has?" He met her gaze, steady. "Then let us rebuild you, piece by piece." Her breath caught. She wanted to argue, to retreat, but the sincerity in his voice broke through her defenses. Slowly, she nodded, letting the cigarette fall to the ground. The next morning, as sunlight spilled across the kitchen, Lily bounded in with her backpack, chattering about a field trip. Emma helped her tie her shoes, listening with patience Daniel sometimes lacked. When Lily ran to grab her coat, Daniel caught Emma's eye. "You're good with her." Emma shrugged, though her throat tightened. "She makes it easy." "No," he said softly, "you make it easy for her." The words lingered long after Lily skipped out the door. Weeks passed. Slowly, the pieces began to settle. The community center thrived under Emma's care. Daniel found steadier work through a friend who owed him a favor. Lily blossomed with two steady figures anchoring her world. And one evening, as the three of them sat at the table, Emma helping Lily with homework, Daniel sipping coffee in the fading light, it hit him. This was it. Not the life he had planned, not the life Emma had expected, but a life nonetheless, a family. Later that night, after Lily was asleep, Daniel found Emma sitting quietly in the living room. He sat beside her, silence stretching before he spoke. "You know, I never thought I'd get here," he admitted. "After Sarah died, I thought that was it, just me and Lily surviving day to day. But then you showed up. And now," he trailed off, his voice cracking. Emma stared at him, her heart pounding. "Now what?" "Now I can breathe again." The words stunned her, cutting deeper than any wound she'd carried. Tears pricked her eyes before she could stop them. She looked away, afraid of what he'd see. Daniel reached, his hand covering hers. "You don't have to keep waiting for it to end, Emma. It's already begun." Her defenses shattered. She turned back, tears spilling freely, and whispered, "I'm so tired of running." "Then stop," he said gently. "Stay." For the first time, she didn't hesitate. She nodded, her hand tightening around his. And in that moment, everything shifted. Not grand, not dramatic, just real. A promise made not in words, but in presence. The next morning, Lily woke to find Emma still there, making breakfast, humming softly to herself. She grinned, running to hug her. "You didn't leave." Emma laughed, holding her close. "I'm not going anywhere." And she meant it. Months later, at Lily's next recital, the gymnasium buzzed again. Parents whispered, children fidgeted, lights dimmed. But this time, Emma didn't feel like an outsider. She sat beside Daniel, their shoulders brushing, Lily's coat draped across both their laps. When Lily stepped onto the stage, her eyes searched until they landed on the two of them together. She smiled, lifted her chin, and began her lines with confidence. Emma's chest swelled with pride, tears blurring her vision. Daniel reached over, his hand brushing hers, steady and certain. In that crowded gym, in the middle of a simple school recital, Emma realized something she had never dared believe before. She wasn't broken anymore. She was home. And sometimes, home doesn't arrive with fanfare or certainty. Sometimes it comes quietly, disguised as a stranger's kindness at a bus stop on a rainy night. Sometimes it grows not from blood, but from choice. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.